Hi, John. Hi, Mary. It's great to see you both today. First off, welcome back from your trip to South Carolina. How was it? That's incredible. That sounds amazing. Were you able to actually get some good rest in between all those activities? That's great. That's great. And how's the family doing? How are Robert, Elaine, and the grandkids? Wonderful. So good to hear everyone's doing well. So before we dive into the plan, I wanted to disclose that the insurance agent who referred you to me provided me with a $4,333 referral fee. With that being said, as a fiduciary, it's my responsibility to disclose that so you have the full picture. But my recommendations today are still entirely based on what's in your best interest. I just wanted to be sure we were clear and transparent on any possible conflicts of interest. Now, John, congratulations on selling your business earlier this year. That is a huge milestone, and I know it took years of dedication. Um, but now that you're both retired, it's the perfect time to take a step back, look at the big picture, and make sure your financial plan works hard for you as you go forward. So here's the plan for today. We'll go through a summary of your financial plan, risk management, investment planning, retirement planning, tax planning, and estate planning. Along the way, I'll explain why each recommendation matters for you, and we'll wrap it up with a clear and prioritized action plan. Does that sound good? Great, great. So let's start with a summary of your financial health. Today, you have a net worth of about 13.7 million and an annual disposable income of just over 1 million. That is an incredible position to be in and something that you both should feel so proud of being able to accumulate. This will give you a lot of flexibility in the choices you get to make as we look forward. It also means we can focus less on the will you have enough and more on the how to best protect, grow, um, and use what you've built. One thing that did stand out to me was your cash position. You currently have about 746,000 in cash and savings. That's more than enough liquidity, um, but it's well above the 3 to 6 months of living expenses I would recommend. For you, that would result in roughly 200,000, and the reason we want to reduce that is because too much idle cash is really going to eat into your purchasing power um, and won't keep up with inflation. So it's going to be, it's kind of going to be held back by that inflation, and then you're missing out on potential growth from the market. If we bring that down to the 200,000, we can free up about 550,000, which part of that can go toward paying off the 60,000 balance on the vacation home mortgage, which is essentially like locking in that 4.75% interest rate as an immediate gain from you no longer having to pay that interest. Um, we can also set some funds aside for your upcoming vehicle purchase so you will not be forced to sell investments at a bad time. And then the rest we will be able to invest in our long term growth portfolios. So, how does that cash reallocation idea feel to you? Great. If your thoughts ever change, we can adjust the cash position as needed in the future. So, now that we've looked at where you stand financially, let's talk about your risk management, starting specifically with your insurance coverage. Here's what I found when reviewing the policies. First, the primary home is actually underinsured. Your policy is for 400,000, but to meet the 80% replacement rule to be fully covered, your policy needs to be at least 620,000. Otherwise, you could end up paying part of your claim out of pocket. And this is typical with some of the older insurance policies. When your home appreciates in value, the home becomes underinsured, which is why it's important to review these policies every few years. For example, like when we look at the vacation home, that policy looks great. No changes needed there. Your policy amount more than covers the 80% replacement rule. Moving on to your auto policy, one thing that we can look into is that your property damage liability is only for $15,000. And considering today's car prices, I'd recommend increasing that to $50,000 or maybe even $100,000 to ensure you're fully protected in an accident, because that $15,000 today won't go that far. And the premium difference is small compared to the protection you're going to be getting. And looking at your boat, which is worth today about $95,000, you don't have any insurance coverage on that, which is a huge gap. We need to cover both the value of the boat itself and the liability to the people on your boat or on another boat if something were to happen. Another thing to consider is with your net worth, an umbrella policy of 10 to 15 million would add a critical layer of protection above your home, auto, and boat coverage. Umbrella coverage is designed to kick in when your liability limits on your other policies are exhausted. For example, if there's a major accident, lawsuit, or injury claim that exceeds your home or auto limits, without it, you could be forced to pay the excess out of pocket, which puts your assets, investments, and even future income at risk. Given your wealth, you're far more likely to be a target for large claims, so this policy acts as an inexpensive safeguard to protect everything you've worked so hard for. For health coverage, you have Medicare Part A, B, and D, which is a solid base. But that being said, Medicare alone can leave you exposed to potentially high out-of-pocket expenses, especially for hospital stays, skilled nursing, or extended treatments. Adding a Medigap or Medicare Advantage plan could help cap those costs, ensure more predictable medical expenses, and give you access to additional benefits like dental, vision, or wellness programs, all of which can make budgeting and retirement much, much easier. And moving on to long-term care, which I know is something specifically you were looking to get more insight into. This is one of the biggest risks in retirement assets. Without coverage, the cost of extended care, whether at home, in assisted living, or in a nursing facility, can quickly erode savings. So my recommendation is putting a shared policy in place, which will cover the first of $360,000 in benefits or 3 years of coverage, which will create a safety net that protects both of you if one of you needs care for an extended period. We can fund this using the $1.1 million in life insurance cash value through a 1035 exchange, which will help you avoid taxes while converting that life insurance asset you don't really need anymore, and it'll turn into a meaningful protection for your future. This approach balances asset preservation with peace of mind. How do you feel about reallocating that life insurance value to long-term care coverage? That's great. So our next step is to move on to the investment planning side. Today, you have about 3.9 million in non-qualified assets and 1.6 million in qualified assets. That's a substantial portfolio, and overall, you've done a great job building wealth. But now it's worth taking a moment here because there are a few levers we can pull to positively influence your long-term outcomes. The first item to consider is the high concentration in the stock portfolio. Just 4 stocks totaling nearly 1 million, that's a lot of eggs in a few baskets, and we'll want to further diversify these investments to decrease that company-specific risk. The good news is we can use this opportunity to do some tax loss harvesting to offset your taxable gains. We have about 20,000 in losses, and we can use that to decrease that taxable income. Another account we'll need to adjust is the allocation for Mary, your 403b. It's currently invested in a 2025 target date fund, which is likely far more conservatively invested than your risk tolerance. So when you look at these target date funds, in the very beginning, they're going to be very aggressive, heavy in market exposure, heavy in equity. But as time moves on to the end of that target date, it's going to be much more likely to be a heavy bond allocation or other fixed income. So we want to shift that over to more align with what you guys are looking for in market risk. You've told me that you're comfortable with market risk and want to focus on growth, and that is what your portfolio has the capacity for. So I recommend a 70% equity and 30% fixed income allocation. This will offer upside while still smoothing some of that volatility in the market. Does that approach feel aligned with how you've been thinking about your investments? Perfect. Moving on to retirement planning. You're in a position where retirement planning is less about will we have enough and more about how do we manage withdrawals and taxes wisely, which is similar to the point I was making about your net income. You guys are in a great spot, so it's really about protecting those assets. We'll have a few options we can decide from when considering what we want to do. First, one thing to note is John, you'll begin your required minimum distributions from your 401k in a few years. And Mary, your 403b RMDs will start a few years after that. These withdrawals are required by law, but you can choose whether to take the scheduled minimum or take more in certain years. Taking only the minimum helps keep taxes lower, while taking more earlier could help fund larger purchases or allow us to reposition assets sooner. Right now, the Roth conversions would push you into a higher tax bracket because of the installment income that John, you're receiving because of that business sale. So once those payments end, we can think about strategically converting portions of your qualified accounts, of your 401k, of your 403b into a Roth IRA. And that will allow future growth to be tax-free and reduces future RMDs, which will help with the stated goal of lowering the taxable income in retirement. Another option is to use QCDs from your IRA to satisfy those RMDs without adding to your taxable income. This can be a tax-efficient way to support charities if you choose to make donations directly from your IRA in the future. It's worth considering if giving is something you'd like to incorporate into your retirement plan. By coordinating these strategies, RMD timing, tax-smart Roth conversions, optional QCDs, we can keep your taxes lower and give you flexibility in cash flow and reduce risk in the early years of retirement. How do these withdrawal strategies sound? Great. So moving on to tax planning, taxes are a big factor this year. The $800,000 down payment from the business sale created a $620,000 in taxable income, plus $23,000 a month from the installment payments. That puts you in a very, very high bracket for the year. So the goal is to minimize the additional taxable income until those installment streams end. Here's how we can approach it. We can look at the Roth IRA rollover timing. As we discussed earlier, a Roth conversion gives you tax-free growth, but you're going to pay ordinary income on the amount that you convert. With the business sale income already pushing you into that high bracket, I'd recommend waiting until those installment payments stop. At that point, your taxable income will drop, making the timing much more favorable from a tax perspective. And then looking at that inverted Jenny stamp, this is a very unique alternative investment that's appreciated significantly. Selling now would trigger a high collectibles tax rate. But if it remains in your estate, your heirs will get a step up in basis and avoid the tax entirely. For that reason, I'd suggest holding onto it and letting it transfer through your estate. Another thing to consider is municipal bonds for tax-free income. So as we look at that 30% in fixed income that we're going to be targeting, shifting your taxable fixed income today into municipal bonds will keep you avoiding that federal tax income, and given your current bracket, that's an efficient way to preserve your income for each year. We can also look at tax-efficient ETFs in your non-qualified accounts. Using ETFs with low turnover helps you reduce annual capital gains distributions and will lower your tax drag. How does that feel? Any questions? Awesome. Glad to hear it. And lastly, let's discuss your estate plan. Neither of you is over the federal state tax threshold right now, but probate can still create unnecessary costs, delays, and stress for your heirs. A few simple proactive steps now can save your family both time and money later. So here's what I'd recommend. Retitle the vacation home, boat, and autos for joint tenancy by the entirety. This form of ownership ensures that when one spouse passes, the assets will automatically transfer to a surviving spouse without going through probate. And right now, you're exposed to significant probate fees. So that's one avenue we can take. Another is we can add on a payable on death (POD) or a transfer on death (TOD) designation to all the investment accounts. These designations bypass probate entirely and will allow the funds to be transferred directly to your chosen beneficiaries. It's a quick, straightforward, and it avoids court involvement. Another thing that we'll want to do is have you meet with an estate attorney to draft durable powers of attorney, healthcare proxies, and update your wills. These legal documents will give someone you trust the authority to make financial or medical decisions on your behalf if you become incapacitated. Keeping your will up to date ensures your assets pass exactly how you intend. Another item is addressing the unique or sentimental items in your will. For example, we'll want to specify that the inverted Jenny stamp will go directly to Mary, making sure your wishes are crystal clear and helps you avoid any confusion or disputes among the heirs. The estimated cost for implementing these is around $10,000, but the peace of mind it provides is well worth the investment. If you don't have a preferred estate planning attorney, I can recommend one to help out. Any last questions on the estate planning? Any questions? Great. And to wrap up, let's cover the action plan. And so for some priorities, I'd suggest tackling these ones in order. First, we want to reduce the estate and gift tax liability. So we want to ensure all estate documents are in order. Meet with the estate planning attorney, draft the executive powers of attorney, healthcare directives, updated wills, and retitle property and accounts to avoid probate and any potential fees that might accompany those assets. We'll want to increase your primary home coverage, obtain boat insurance, increase the property damage coverage on the auto policy, and we'll want to add that umbrella policy of 10 to 15 million. We'll also want to evaluate the Medigap or Medicare Advantage coverage and implement a comprehensive long-term care policy through that 1035 exchange with your current life insurance cash value. We still want to make sure that reducing those personal income taxes are top of mind. So shifting or ensuring that we're invested in those municipal bonds will help us do that. Also looking at possible QCDs to offset the RMDs. And then, of course, like we noted earlier, deferring that Roth conversion until the installment income ends to avoid the high marginal rates. We'll want to realign your portfolio with the risk tolerance and investment needs. You can do that by implementing that 70-30 equity to fixed income allocation, diversifying concentrated stock holdings, and reallocate Mary's 403B from the expiring 2025 target date fund into the broader allocation strategy. We'll also want to make sure we reduce the excess emergency fund and improve that capital efficiency. With current cash balances significantly exceeding the recommended emergency fund amount, we can reduce the cash holdings by approximately that $550,000 I noted earlier, and use a portion to pay off the existing mortgage, set some aside for the car purchase, and invest the remainder according to the recommended 70-30 allocation. How do these action items sound for you? Do the priorities feel right? That's great. That's great. Well, I really appreciate you both taking the time today to walk through everything in detail. You've put yourselves in a very strong financial position, and it's something you should feel very proud of. With a few targeted updates, you'll be even more protected and positioned for the future. So thanks again for your trust. I'm looking forward to continuing to work together with you on the next steps. I'll be here if you ever have any questions. Thank you so much. Have a great day.